The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 15th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus said, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit he prunes to make it bear more fruit. You have already been cleansed by the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me is thrown away like a branch and withers. Such branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. Speaking of enthusiasm, which our kids today had in spades, I love other people's enthusiasm. I love how contagious it is, how all it takes is one person's passionate response to get a whole group of people involved in something. Have you ever been to a meeting or a planning session where one person's enthusiasm gets everybody else worked up, and all of a sudden you've got ideas flying around just because one person's enthusiasm kind of sparked it all? I live for those moments. Maybe it's because I'm already a pretty enthusiastic person. If you haven't noticed, and I'm sure you have, I talk with my hands. I can't stop thinking about it right now, so I'm going to do it. They're almost always moving, especially when I'm feeling passionate about something. I sometimes talk really fast, as if there are so many words and ideas rolling around in my head that I almost can't get them out fast enough. I laugh loudly. I use hyperbole liberally, noting that far too many things are the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And maybe all of that is why I love the story from Acts this morning. Acts of the Apostles is full of stories about conversion and baptism, but this one is by far my favorite. This story about the Ethiopian eunuch stands out amidst the sermons and miracles and confrontations with authorities, because if nothing else, this Ethiopian is enthusiastic, especially about his faith. This man has a high power position within the Ethiopian royal court, even if his social status, being a eunuch, is still rather low. He's in charge of the entire treasury for the queen. He is trusted and likely well compensated for his loyalty, and yet even with this lofty role, he's taking a very long journey to Jerusalem. He goes to worship at the temple, even though being a eunuch, he wouldn't be considered a whole man, and so wouldn't be able to participate fully in temple worship. He reads the prophet Isaiah to himself, even though he struggles to understand it, and he invites Philip, a stranger, on the road up into his chariot to teach him. And then he sees this small bit of water and immediately wants to be baptized, going on his way rejoicing and proclaiming the good news of Jesus. And of course, this Ethiopian's enthusiasm can be highlighted in the question he asks Philip: what is to prevent me from being baptized? Not what must I do to be baptized, but what is to prevent me from being baptized? What would our faith look like if we lived with such enthusiasm? What would it mean if we operated out of a place of possibility and hope instead of doubt and pessimism? Is this whole idea of ask for forgiveness, not permission, that the Ethiopian seems to be operating out of? What might be the questions we would ask? What is to prevent us from providing food for the hungry and shelter for the homeless? What is to prevent us from offering equal opportunities to everyone, regardless of their race, gender, creed, or any of those labels we love to put on each other? What is to prevent us from boldly proclaiming the freedom and abundant life we have in Jesus Christ? These questions and more questions. What is to prevent us from living our faith and not just talking about it on Sunday mornings? What is to prevent us from being God's presence in the world? What is to prevent us from being God's hands? I have a classmate from high school. His name is Dwight. I feel like my parents might laugh a little bit because he was a quirky guy. We haven't kept in touch much, but Facebook, of course, makes the world small. And whenever I think of this question, what is to prevent us from doing things, I always think about something that happened to him 9 years ago. He had been attempting to climb Mount Everest. Now let me remind you that 9 years ago, in April of 2015, there was an earthquake in Nepal. Maybe you remember that. It hit while he was on Mount Everest. His expedition was relatively safe, but an avalanche near them took out most of their base camp and ended too many lives. Instead of trying to get out of the country as quickly as possible, Dwight and some of his fellow climbers leapt into the rescue effort, helping as much as they could. Now, Dwight had Silicon Valley money. He had an app that he sold and had a lot of money, which is why he was climbing Mount Everest, because you have to have a lot of money. So he had the money to be able to afford a helicopter evacuation. He could buy his way onto a flight home. Instead, he asked himself a version of what is to prevent me from doing what I can here. And so instead of taking that helicopter flight out, he donated what it would have cost to do so to those same villages and stuck around for at least a month to lend his hands and his feet and his body and soul to the place that he found himself in. He started up a fundraising site for those same villages and did what he could.